I know that doesn't sound so good there, Brian. I'm
User
using
yeah.
it.
Well, whatever you're using, Marcia, share, okay?
Okay, I promise. I promise.
After this summer.
3:01 at 3:00, right?
So Marcia, I thought I'd tap on you for a little bit of help here, just to kind of show some of the things that you do with it. And what I was thinking about doing was just to kind of go through and show a couple of things that you can do in Google Classroom, kind of compare it to Sapphire, and see the similarities, differences, and kind of how that works.
That's fine. I have an example pulled up whenever you want me to, and I can probably pull up other ones too. I mean, I just pulled up a government, but there's other ones I can probably do as well.
Okay.
Mostly just the instructions and stuff like that, but I can at least show that if you want me to when you're ready.
Okay. All right. So what I wanted to start with was just kind of a little overview, the whole concept of a learning management system or an LMS, some place where you can house your class, your online class, for your students to be able to access. So there's a lot of different ones out there. Canvas and Schoology are pretty popular examples. Sapphire would also count as an LMS because, it incorporates a whole bunch of different things. You have a platform, your class page, where you can share materials and resources with students. You have a place where students can interact in a discussion board. And you also have that testing functionality with the test builder. So, an LMS is kind of full-fledged, all-in-one kind of package. Google Classroom is not officially an LMS, but it is very, very close. And definitely the fact that it is free for schools, anybody with a Google for Education account has access to it. That's one of the reasons why it's become so popular. And Google has really done a lot over the years to improve and enhance it. So you'll see a lot of similarities and differences between what we've shown with Sapphire in the past. It does not have that real testing functionality, but in terms of organizing and distributing information to your students, it is a great way to do that. So first, to access it, if you just go to classroom.google.com in a web browser, there is also an app for the iPad that students and teachers can use to access and manage their Google Classroom pages. And when you go in the first time, it might ask you if you're a teacher or a student. If you select that you're a teacher, then you have certain permissions. You can create a class, you can join a class. Students can only join a class. There is a behind the scenes approval thing that either Charlie or I have to do. So not any student can create a class. It is restricted to just teachers. So that's all you need to do to access it. Once you're in, you'll see a page similar to this. If you don't have any classes yet, you'll have an icon to start a new class. Right now I have, these are ones that I have just kind of played around with at varying degrees of setup. So we'll take a look at a couple of those and see what that looks like. But all you would have to do to create a class is this little plus sign button up here in the top right corner. Click that, and the create a class option is right there. The only thing you have to do is give it a name, some way to differentiate one class from another, one section from another, and then all the other information there is optional. So when you fill that out, you go ahead and click create. As soon as you do, it'll take you to a totally blank Google Classroom page that will look something like this. Now, one of the things that's nice is for your view as a teacher, it's almost exactly identical to the student's view, except for this little tab up top here with grades. So I'll get into navigation here in a second, but what you're seeing on your page is almost exactly identical to what students see. So that makes it a little bit easier for, kind of understanding where the students are, what they're seeing, and that kind of thing. One of the things that Google added pretty recently was this integration with Google Meet and generating a Meet link that's unique for your class. Probably not as necessary for us now. If you haven't heard yet, we did purchase Zoom premium features for the teachers. So Zoom will be our primary platform, but if you're doing office hours maybe and want to keep those sections separate, Google Meet might be an option for that. And then when you generate that link, it shows up on the students' pages and they can just access it all from there.
That's going to show up this year, Brian. If I
For
create a new class for Google
for the
Class.
Meet link, yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, that'll be there now. The other information that's on this page, the class code, this is one of the ways that students can join your class. This little display button here will make it bigger so students who are in your classroom can join using that class code. You can display that when you're sharing your screen. And then, you know, as far as customization goes, you can change the theme. They have these nice little tiles and things that you can pick English or math and science. And it changes the color scheme. Diane, here's a purple one for you. That color scheme then continues all the way throughout. So you don't have to go and customize page after page. It'll do all that for you, which is kind of nice. It looks pretty good. So here on the first page, this is your class stream. So this is where you share, you know, updates, announcements, posts, and things like that to your students. You can, you know, if you click right here to share something with your class, you can choose what type of post it is. You know, these things are mostly informational. You can select multiple classes if you want to post the same things to multiple sections. If you have students in the class, you can post it to all students, or you can select individual students. Type out what it is you want to post, and then if you wanted to add any attachments, you click the add button, and you can add attachments from Google Drive, a link to a website. You can upload a file from your computer or include a YouTube video. So all these things you can add right here, and then they get attached to this posting. And then once you type something in there, you can post it immediately, or if you click this little drop-down arrow, you can schedule the post to come out, you know, maybe 8 a.m. on Monday morning or something like that. You can preload some of these things ahead of time. As far as organization goes, the class stream puts the newest post on top. So whatever you most recently post, it comes to the top of the page. So this, if you preload a lot of things, this can get a little overwhelming for students. But you could schedule those posts and kind of space things out a little bit, maybe before or after class or something like that. But there is not a whole lot of organization to this. This is just for you to kind of communicate with students that way. Okay, so that's the stream tab. If we go over here to classwork, this is the one where you can organize and assign things to your students. So up here at the top, here's your Google Meet link. Again, students see this whole page as it is. You have your Google Calendar link. So one thing to kind of be aware of is each section that you create in Google Classroom, there's a separate Google Calendar that is created with that section. So all the due dates to go along with that section, that class, are posted on that Google Calendar. Students also see that as well. So there is a little bit of integration there. And then up here, the create button, if you click on that, these are all the different things that you can create to save here in classwork. So topics are these headings that I have here, and then inside each topic, you can post different assignments, different materials, whatever it might be. I organize mine by unit. This was a summer session of Infotech, a credit recovery kind of class. So what I did here was I have each unit separated by topic, and then what I can do is I can actually click and drag and move these things around if I wanted to reorder them for some reason. Like maybe in the future I would replace, maybe I would do Google Slides before I would do Google Sheets. I can click and drag and move that entire topic with everything that's included in it. I can drag it and move it around in a different order for students. So to create a topic, all you do is just type the title of the topic, and that's it, and then it gets created. And then the other things that you can create, so you can create an assignment for students. This would be almost like the Dropbox in Sapphire. So an assignment, you would give a title and instructions, and you can add, again, those same things. Google Drive, a link to a website, a file from your computer, or a YouTube video. So those might be things that would help students. Maybe it's the directions for the assignment or for the project, a link to a website or a YouTube video that would help them to complete that assignment, whatever that might be. You can select which class or classes. You can do multiple. You can select all students or maybe only specific students if you're going to give different projects to different students. And then you can select the point value, or if it's going to be ungraded, maybe it's a participation thing, or just you want to remind them and put something on the calendar that is going to be an ungraded assignment. Set your due date. And if you want to assign it to a topic, it'll automatically populate with that specific topic. You can also create a topic if you need to. And there is a plagiarism checker, which is a new feature. The only thing that I'll say about that is you're limited to 3 in a year for right now. They have education. Now Google has an enterprise for education, which is a paid version of Google. I think it's like $250 per student per month or something. It would be a little bit of an expense to add that here. And by now we've already mentioned that we're going to go to Turnitin as an option for assignments that would have that plagiarism checker built in. So I wouldn't worry about this too much down here. But then as soon as you create your assignment here, you can assign it right away. You can also schedule to assign it at a later date. So you could kind of preload these things ahead of time. Sorry,
Ryan, can I jump in for a second? No,
Mhm.
I didn't need to know you, but
No, that's okay.
just so everybody knows, it's a little different if you create it on your iPad versus your computer, your laptop. The reason being is that when you create it on the iPad, and I use my little portable keyboard when I do this, you can make it specific because the exact times for the classes, because I have found that if you put it on there and it's on there 1 second after midnight, like for Monday or something the next day, and I'm not just talking during the pandemic period, I found that many students are going to do it before they get to class, especially our exchange students. They're going to do that before they get to class, and then they'll sit there and do something else. So to prevent that, a lot of times what I'll do is I know first period goes from 8:20 to 9:06, I will make it that they have to turn it in 3 minutes before the period ends, and they can't start it until like a few minutes into the period, because then I can at least control that and it won't show up for them, I don't think. If it does, and I don't know, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, if it does, they can't get access to it. They can't. So just make sure that you're aware of that if you really want to schedule it down to the minute like that, and to prevent them from doing the work before they get to class, or passing it on before they get to class. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. That's a good point. So you can schedule the assignment, and then what'll happen is almost like in Sapphire when we set the start time and end time, it won't appear to the student until that schedule time happens. And if they're already on the page, they might have to refresh the page to see it once it opens up. So that might be something, if you do schedule it down to the minute like that, if they log in early, they're not going to see it. They might have to go back and refresh at that specific time. But you're right. If you schedule the assignment here and then have the due date here and the due time, you can also set that as well. Otherwise, it defaults to 11:59 p.m. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to mention here was when you add a file or something from Google Drive. So here I added, let's say, a slideshow. Maybe I wanted to share my notes with students. You can set the permission level from here. You can say that students can only view the file. Students can edit the file, which if you wanted it to be collaborative, that would be okay. I wouldn't necessarily want them to change my slideshow. But you could also make a copy for each student. So what would happen there is if I selected that option, the students would go click it or tap it on their iPad, And when it opened up, they would have their own personal copy that they could edit, manipulate, change, whatever it might be, without affecting my original. So that might be another option for you as well. Sorry, Diane, did you have a question?
No, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm just like going, sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, it sounds good. My question is, I'm looking at this and I'm probably jumping ahead of myself, which I tend to do. But when can the students then submit right through here
Yep. So
when they do things? Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm probably jumping ahead.
Well, no, that's good for them because they can, and you'll be able to see exactly when, like the time and everything. So there's a record, and then you also know that if it's late. So that's why if I assign something during the period and they know they have to get it done, they can't mess around. They have to get it done and before in that time. Now I can obviously open it again for students that are absent and things like that. And I do make exceptions if there's a lot of work and they say, well, I don't think I'm going to get done. And then I'll just open it up the next day for them and give them extra time. But regardless, if the kid says, well, I did it on time. No, you didn't. It's obvious. You didn't do it on time. You did it late, and it's the proof.
Right.
Sorry, Brian.
No, that's okay. So over here, I'm also logged in as a student in the same class, just so we can kind of see. So you can see the view is the same here in the stream. I can see everything. I can't post in the stream as a student. Here in the classwork tab, this is where I see all of the topics and any assignments that are here. So this is the demo assignment. This is the one I just created as a teacher. And if here as a student, I open this up, I can see the link to the slides. And I can also, if I view the assignment, here's my place to, so class comments here, I could post something that the whole class could see. So maybe a question for the good of the group or something like that. A private comment over here on the right would only go to the teacher. So I could say, Mrs. Young, I don't understand this part of the directions or something like that. So you could have this communication all within this place. And then for me as the student, I could include something from Google Drive or a link or a file that I upload from my iPad and then go to turn in. And then this is where I would turn it in and then the teacher would see my work after I do that. Does that help a little bit?
Yep.
All right, let me go back to, all right, so now we're back in the teacher view. So that was an assignment. A quiz assignment is very, very similar. The only thing is it generates a blank Google Forms quiz that you would then have to go into and then create your Google Forms quiz. I've heard things online from other teachers who do this that this isn't the best way to do this necessarily. I think this is Google's way of trying to make it easier, but this quiz can't be reused again, like in a future class or something like that. It's almost like a one-time kind of thing. So my suggestion would be, like Rob, what you mentioned earlier, to go into Forms, Google Forms, and create a quiz, and then just herein creating an assignment, add it as an attachment if you were going to go that route. Just from what I read online, this is a newer feature. This is something they added because of the COVID shutdown. So people who are heavy users of Google Classroom weren't a big fan of that. The question option here to create a question, this is your basic discussion board post. So if I go ahead and post a question, whatever the question might be, maybe I put here in the instructions, please reply to 2 classmates or something like that, just a little extra emphasis. And then you can choose what type of question you want it to be. So short answer would be your standard discussion board post. You could also do a multiple choice if you wanted to do like a polling question or something like that. That could be an option as well. And then you just put the multiple choice options in there below it. So I have down here just a standard, getting started module kind of question, class expectations. So here, let me show you what that looks like from a student's perspective. If I change my screen. So here's the class expectations one. If I click on that as a student and view the question, All right, very similar kind of interface. So here's my prompt. Please post any questions that you have about the class guidelines. If you have no questions, please respond with, I understand the guidelines and procedures. So here's what I've noticed with students doing this. If they're not used to Google Classroom, if they haven't really gotten any training in Google Classroom, they see the question here and they see the space below it and they type their answer in the class comments. That's okay. Some students see over here where it says your answer and they type in their answer here. Okay, and then they go to turn in. Once they do that, then they can see their classmates' answers. They also see the private comments.
You almost have to tell them, don't go in the class comments. It has to be either in private comments or, like you said, in the your answer. You have to like tell them that, or they don't know where to go.
Yep. So yeah, so you really have to specify where it is you want the students to respond. So if they see class comments, they can just post, you know, one post per thread, like for the whole thread. They can't really reply to each other if they use the class comments, but everybody can see it. The private comments go only to the teacher, so the students wouldn't be able to see each other's. Where it says your answer up here in the top right, that's where they could go. Once they post their answer, then they could see their classmates' answers and could reply to a classmate, creating that discussion post thread. For me, I think I like the interface. I like the way it works as a teacher to be able to use it and see it. I think as a student, it's a little confusing. So I just wanted to mention that for the usage of it, you know, where you have that place to add additional instructions, you might want to say, please post in the your answer section, see your classmates' answers and reply to two classmates if that's what you want them to do. But just to kind of be aware of how that whole thing works, can be a little bit confusing.
Question.
Sure, Rob.
Which, like, particularly with the freshmen, I'm loath to start jumping between two different LMSs,
Right.
which means Sapphire would probably be my default. Compared to Sapphire, is this much better, about the same?
My own opinion is I think it's about the same.
Okay.
The interface is a little bit nicer to look at.
Right.
And the biggest advantage is Google's integration with other products like Edpuzzle,
Okay.
and stuff like that, where you can kind of use that class list. Like if I go over here to the people tab, I think.
Yeah.
You know, you can use this class list to just make sure I'm sharing the right screen.
Because I know Sean has used this extensively,
Mm-hmm.
and I have not. But if I'm going to be teaching a senior section this year, then that might be a really good one for me to start using for the seniors alone and get me comfortable with it. Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, but no, you're right. That might be a good way to handle it. You know, there's going to be a lot of new stuff this year. So, you know,
Really? No.
You know, so it's up to you if you want it to be the year that you add something else new. I think you could handle it, especially for just one section of a class.
Right. That's kind of what I'm thinking. You know, if it's going to be crazy, heck, why not go for it?
Right. Go all in, right? So, you know, like I said, I think the things that you can do, the verbiage is a little bit different than Sapphire. The things you can do with it are very, very similar.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think if you were going to do it just with the seniors, that would be a really good way to start. Yeah. So the only other thing is the material here. This would be how you could share if you just wanted to share resources with students. You know, maybe you had documents or things in Google Drive. Like Rob, I'm thinking for English, if you had something that you wanted them to read, like a short story that was scanned, you could add a file or a link here. You don't necessarily have to post it as an assignment. You could just post it as just extra material for them to be able to access.
Okay.
And then, for anybody thinking about doing this for multiple years, or even for you, Marcia, the question always becomes at the end of the year, now what do I do with this class? What you can do is you could, go through and delete all the people that are in it, but it can become kind of messy. The students who come in the next year see everything. They see everything in the stream. Might be a little overwhelming. So a lot of people suggest starting fresh, and then with a brand new class, clean slate.
Right, but can I take those assignments from before that I want to reuse and drag them over? That's my big question, because I had to create new ones for this year. Well, not new assignments, but new classes to prevent them from going, oh, look, and I'll do this one ahead of time.
Right.
Nope, not happening.
So if you go to this reuse post, so you go create and then reuse post, now you can choose what class. So if you archive old classes, those will still show up, or any other class that you currently have active. You can select a class. So I'll pick on the AP Gov one with Karen. And then from here, I can see all these different things that were posted. So questions or assignments, and then just select them and click reuse, and it'll give me that option to edit, but everything that was there before will automatically be there. So I could just post it or schedule it or whatever it might be. So that might be a little bit easier too, thinking towards the future, if you're going to do it again and again, to be able to reuse it. Another thing that I was just thinking, because Rob, you mentioned it, with Sean being a user of Google Classroom for so long, something that he could do if, let's say for example, he had that senior class that Rob, you might be picking up. He could go in and add you as a co-teacher of his class, and then you could copy forward and reuse those posts that you have access to.
Oh, okay.
So, just thinking ahead, if this was something that maybe we wanted to share. Now, for this situation, for this year, it might not work out. But how we sometimes have teachers who, we shift classes around. You might get a section that somebody else had the previous year or something like that.
Right.
I always pick on, John's not here, but I always pick on environmental science that nobody wants. That might be a way, if they were using that, that you could then reuse those posts. Like with AP Gov, I'm only a co-teacher. Karen actually owns that class, but I have full access. I could copy any of those questions if I wanted to use them, or any of those assignments into a class of my own. I have full access for that. So collaboratively, that might be something as well. But that's pretty much it as far as the creation goes, and things that you can add. So anything that's in Google Drive can be shared with students, which is really helpful. Now the People tab, this is the one where you can add, so up here at the teacher level, you can add and invite a co-teacher to your class. Then they would have all the same rights that you do as a teacher. The only thing they cannot do is delete the entire class.
Right.
But they can interact with students and all that kind of stuff. And then for students, you can add students by email if you want to type their email address, or if you create a group email, like I have mine for my class. Oh, I deleted that, but bad example. But you can add student emails. The other option would be to share that class code with students for them to just go in and join using the code. If you put their email addresses in, they get an invitation that they have to click to accept to enter the class. But either way, this tends to be a little bit easier when you have students who are in front of you. If you have students who might choose to learn from home, maybe you just want to add their email addresses in onesie-twosies like that. You can also invite guardians. So if you want to pull the student parent emails out of Sapphire, you could put the email addresses in there and invite them, and then they would have access, not to everything, but they would at least be able to kind of see what's going on in the Google Classroom page. And then from here, you could also email the students. If you click this little 3 dots and email, it'll just open up your Gmail account and automatically address an email to a student that you could type into. Okay. And then the only other tab for you here is the grades tab, which is just a very, kind of plain grade book where you can go in and you can view student submissions. So if I click the little 3 dots here, I can look at, how the student responded. You can reply. So this would be a class comment everybody could see. This would be a private comment, which would only go to the student. You could do something like that. And the students would be able to see. And then you can put a grade in there.
And of course, if we do this, we'll just have to recopy that into Sapphire. There's no way to just transcribe. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no link between the two.
Right.
So you gotta, manually enter them.
Brian, I have a question. How is this going to work with Turnitin? So if I do use this, I have to have them turn it in through here and through Turnitin, correct? If we want to do that, I mean, I can use this where I don't really need to use the part about Turnitin, but if we are being required to have everything pass through that, then, I don't know. Are we, is my question.
So
if I do want to use it though, I guess I'd have to have them turn it in 2 different places, Google Classroom and in Turnitin, correct?
So Turnitin is really only going to accept text documents.
Okay.
So papers, essays, reaction paragraphs, that kind of stuff. Journals,
Okay.
Whatever it might be. They're really only going to look at text. Their big claim to fame is the plagiarism checker.
Okay.
So they'll run it through a database of student submissions. They'll run it through a database of web pages and kind of give you a report. And there's also feedback within Turnitin. So you can, the same kind of feedback, comments, and things that you can put here in Google Classroom, you can do in Turnitin as well. Now, that being said, if you require any other kind of assignment or file type submission from students, like if they're going to do a video or a PowerPoint project or something like that, you're probably going to have to collect it a different way, maybe here through Google Classroom or maybe even through Sapphire Dropbox. Yeah. So Turnitin's not going to be able to collect everything. And,
Right.
I guess with students, you're just going to have to be clear with what the expectation is. So if you post an assignment here in Google Classroom, because if you're using this as your LMS, you might have to direct them or put a link in there to turn it in and say, please submit all work to Turnitin.
So then I can do that. They are usable together is what I'm saying. So I'd have to put a link in there in the directions or add it on, like, add a YouTube video or something like that for them to say, I want you to turn it in both to Google Classroom and to Turnitin.
If you wanted to, but you can grade in Turnitin as well. Okay. So, and then you're gonna have to transfer the grade either from Google Classroom or Turnitin to Sapphire.
Yeah,
so
I don't want to be redundant, but at the same time, I don't want, little Brian there in first period to be passing his stuff over to little Diane in 8th period. You know what I'm saying? That's my concern. Sorry, Diane, but
we were collaborating. We were not sharing. We were collaborating.
Yes, that's right. You're collaborating. That's a matter of semantics. Is it? You were working together. Yes. Okay. Then boom, there it is. Okay. But anyhow, yeah, I was just thinking of it that way. I mean, if I have some kind of an essay, obviously that's a little harder to do, to sort of, copy or do anything like that. But by the same token, I want to be able to see if somebody is, passing stuff on. Now, I mean, obvious stuff like vocabulary, that's fine. I don't care about that because it's going to be the same anyway. But if it is something where somebody is passing one thing to the other, I want to be able to pick up those similarities. So I can put the link for Turnitin embedded in the assignment in Google Classroom.
Yep. So when you
Okay,
would
good.
go to create, let's say create an assignment, let's see. Yeah, I would say maybe here in the instructions, maybe just say, for this assignment, please submit all work to turn it in. And then you could put www.turnitin.com or whatever the place is to
Right.
submit. If you wanted to add either, you could add
The
you could add
link.
a link to the website. You could just do it right from there. You could add, if we have like a YouTube video to show students, which I'm planning on working on soon, how to submit to turn it in. You could include that, so that they have all that kind of all in the same place.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would make it easier. It's just that I may, if it is something like that, I may require them to submit it to both places because I just want to make sure we aren't having any shenanigans that, should not be.
Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if there was a way to turn off like student submissions. If you only wanted them to submit to one and not the other, you could disable it, but you can't from what I'm seeing there. Where was, okay. So yeah, so grading. The other thing I wanted to mention, one of the last things I wanted to mention was here with the settings gear up here on the right. If you click that, so these are the settings for your individual class. So you can update the class details that you set up from the beginning. The class code, you could reset if, let's say, God forbid, gets out, people join that aren't supposed to be there, or something like that. You could change the class code. You can also remove people from the class, so you don't have to worry about anything like that. Your class stream, you can change, if you want it really restricted that only the teachers can post or comment, you can have that. If you want the students to be able to comment on things that you post to that stream, like maybe if they have questions or something like that, they could post. Or if you want it really open, you could allow students to post and comment. But if you do that, there's really no filtering or anything like that. So you'd have to kind of keep an eye on it just to make sure. And then, let's see, Google Meet, you can generate the Meet link and choose whether or not it's visible to students. And then grading calculation, however you want to do, if you want it total or weighted by category, you can add categories. Some teachers in other schools that don't have something like Sapphire or another SIS actually use Google Classroom as their grade book. But we don't really need to do that. So you probably don't need to go crazy with creating categories and things here if you don't want to. So that's on a class by class basis. If I go back to the home page here, where I see all of my classes, and up here on the left where the main menu is, if I click that, down here at the bottom is settings. And these are settings for Google Classroom in general. All right, so here, whether or not you get notification emails, all on or all off. So if you do this, you get no emails at all from Google Classroom from any of your sections. If you turn it on, you can be selective about which emails you get notifications of. So, comments. So if you get certain comments from students, maybe on your posts or something like that, you can turn those on and off. And then for the classes that you teach, late submissions of student work, for me, that's a big one because sometimes students will turn things in a week or two late after I've already graded them. So this would be a way for me to kind of get an update and say, hey, Marcia submitted something finally, and kind of an indicator, go in and make sure you grade that. And then class notifications, you can go at a class by class level and get notifications for the classes that you're listed as a teacher of. So for me, I turned off AP Gov and Politics because, Karen had me in there as a co-teacher. Every time a student submitted work, I was getting email updates, and I only filled in as a sub. I didn't have to grade anything, which was great. So I turned off those notifications so I didn't have to worry about those. But you tend to get quite a few emails from Google Classroom if you have all those email notifications set up. So just to kind of be aware of that. You can also set up filters. So if you could filter all the Google Classroom emails to a totally different folder or label in your Gmail so it doesn't clutter up your inbox. That would be possible too. And then students would see a page kind of similar to this with all the classes that they're enrolled in. They would have each of these little cards here for the classes that they're enrolled in, and they would get these little updates on the homepage here of things like upcoming due dates and times when things are going to be due, which is kind of nice. This is a newer feature too for students. So just to kind of, and then that would jump them right to the assignment directly. So they've updated it quite a bit in the last year or two. Changes are always being made, and try to keep it current. So I just wanted to give everybody a general overview of what Google Classroom is all about, kind of what it looks like. Marcia, did you want to share anything? Because you use it differently. I only use it to understand how it works and help troubleshoot. I don't actually use it all that often as an LMS. So maybe anything that you've learned or pitfalls or anything like that. I can actually stop sharing if you want to share your screen.
Well, I want to share, but Daisy also wants to share too. So I apologize if that's happening or she's barking. She's just getting upset right now. Anyway, shh, Daisy.
Pay attention to her.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing that I mentioned before was I noticed that if you want to have that particular specificity with the time and stuff, you may want to do that just because I know, like I said, some students will try to do it before class. And if you're planning to do it in class, you're going to have problems with that. So the only way you can do that is if you actually use the iPad to put it into or to enter in the assignment to give that specific time. Otherwise, when you use the laptop, you are limited to just saying an end time and not a beginning time. I like to use the iPad to actually use a beginning time and an end time if I'm going to have it for use inside class. Just be forewarned that if there is a lot of work on there, you may have to go to the next day or open it up for students the next day. And I don't mind doing that because it's already generated and it's already done. The only other thing that I noticed is that when I do that on the iPad and I have a specific time, you're going to have to put it in for all the classes that you want in. I was never able to just take it, and for some reason it won't let you generate it for the others. You have to type it in again. So just be forewarned of that. I don't know, maybe I'm doing something wrong, Brian. You can jump in and tell me that, but I think that that's the only pitfall. If you set it up on your iPad, or if you set it up on the computer and you do it, it's fine. But like I said, that's the only pitfall with that. I do like using it. I don't mind getting those emails because then I know, and I actually use that really a lot during the time, during the COVID time that we were out. And yes, it does clutter up your email, but I could see when somebody turned it in. I could see when somebody turned it in late. It was really mostly the late assignments. And then what I did when I had to go back and grade those, I double checked on that to make sure that it was there and the time, etc. And, deducted the appropriate points if kids were late. What 1 or 2 points, whatever it was, 10%. But at least I had a chance to see, okay, so-and-so did turn it in, or kids that were absent. That's really good with kids that are absent because then you can tell when they've handed it in. Oh yeah, that's right. Brian was absent on that day. So it is a good reminder that way, but it can drive you nuts. I had like millions of them during COVID. So you just have to watch that. And I guess I'll have to use your advice, Brian, and create just a file for that. So I won't be driven nuts, but I do like using it. I think it's very effective. Let me just close this down a little bit and maybe I could share my screen if I can pull that up there. Hold on. Sorry, I'm sort of thinking out loud here and trying to get back to where I was. I don't know if it's going to let me, Brian. I'm trying to share the screen, but I don't think it's going to let me.
Okay.
Let me see. Hold on. No, it's not letting me get to that view. What is going on with this? Oh, okay. Let's try this. I don't know if you can see that or not. Probably not. I probably didn't hit the share thing. Let me see. Sorry,
That's
because
okay.
I'm not used to doing this. Let's hit share screen. And there we go. Does that work? Everybody see that?
Yep.
Yep, there it is.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really careful, and I'm not sure if it's in with this one, but be real specific, very specific with your directions. If you are just glancing at those, I like to put number 3 in there, because what the kids will do is just copy and paste. And if you don't mind that, that's fine. But I think it's important for them to create their own stuff. So I also include directions about how I want it set up, things like that. Number 5, don't submit a class comment or private. It needs to be as an attachment. So again, just be real specific with those things. And I'm glad with COVID, I learned how to attach, videos and things like that. So I was learning along the way too, with this as well. But just make sure you're really specific with your instructions, because that's like the only way you're going to get the kids to do what you want them to do, and you'll get the result, hopefully the results that you want, because you're at least specific in that. I don't know, I like to use it because then they can turn it in. I know they have to be working on it, especially if it's in class. I just find it easy to use, and because I've used it so many times. So if you can't find Brian, I'm pretty good at it by now. So if you need help, just let me know. Anybody have any questions for me? Okay. So how do I'll stop sharing. All right, got it. There we go.
Perfect. All right.
Anybody have any questions for me about that? No? Okay.
There's one more thing I just wanted to mention. I put a link in the chat. I said that, Google's biggest thing with Classroom is the app integration that they have with other sources. So, Pearson Education sometimes will integrate, so you can use that class list from Google Classroom to populate if you have textbook publisher resources and things like that. But just kind of scrolling down, there's a big long list here, and I don't have to go through all of them, but I did notice a couple, like Edpuzzle is one that we're looking at, or actually we purchased for the fall. So there's a way to kind of integrate those things together. And Rob, I noticed Gail is here too. So if you find something on Gail's website, it looks like you can pretty easily either assign it or share it with your students right from Gail to.
Yeah, Sean's done a lot of that.
Oh, has he? Good. Khan Academy was another popular one. Over Shutdown, Newsella, PBS. So there's a whole bunch of different ones in here, quizzes and Quizlet. So just wanted.
Are they all on there, Brian? Are they all on there that you have attached to this, or?
So I shared this link. This is just Google's website for product support for Google Classroom. And you can even narrow down if you were curious, like, what fits in with language, the different websites that are there. A lot of these too have, a free aspect to most of them, if not all of them. So, you might even find something here that you didn't know existed that might sound like it works well with your class. And a lot of times it has to do with the rostering. You use your Google Classroom roster to get students set up on that other application. But sometimes you can just kind of integrate those things. Like I know with Pearson, you can assign work from Pearson's site to Google Classroom. The students go to Google Classroom, click the link, and it takes them out to the Pearson site specifically for them. It just makes it a little bit easier for them than trying to go to all these different sites and places like that. So just wanted to mention that last thing. But, for Rob and Diane, are there any questions or anything that you were wondering about or want to know about?
No, I think I'm just gonna have to play a little bit and see, if I'm used to using Sapphire now, right now after this spring. I'll just have to play and see which one I like better.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I would ask of any teacher who's using it is just to post on your Sapphire page where the information is going to be. How to get into Google Classroom, or that everything else is going to be in Google Classroom. I had a friend who taught at a school that was not prepared when they went out for COVID, and they just told the teachers, here's a whole bunch of LMSs, Schoology is free, Canvas is free, Google Classroom's available, like all these different things, go and do. And then the students were really kind of overwhelmed with, where the heck do I go to find anything? So I think for us, kind of limiting it to either Sapphire or Google Classroom is not necessarily a bad thing. Just as long as the students all kind of know, go to Sapphire first, look at that page, and if it says go to Google Classroom, here's the link to Google Classroom, or whatever it might be. And after a little while, they'll understand that. But I'm just thinking with the beginning of the year, I'm hoping we can stay in as long as possible, or really hoping we can stay in for a full year. But just trying to think of different things that might confuse the students and that kind of stuff. So.
Well, and when you put that on that task sheet, I did that on the task sheet too, that there was a Google Classroom assignment as well as on Sapphire. So there were specific directions on Sapphire. One, go to, go to Sapphire first and read this. Two, go to Google Classroom, do this. This way they can't really say, well, I don't understand where to go. You're telling them, like you said, you're telling them right out.
Yeah. And I've seen people organize the classwork page that way too. Instead of units, they do it weekly. Almost like a college model, like, week 1, September 1st through the 6th or whatever. And these are your assignments. This is what you need to do, or these are the resources that go along with it. And just kind of organize it or rather than topically, they organize it by week.
One question though I had, Brian, for you
Sure.
that was, I noticed whenever I created a new assignment, it shows up at the bottom. So I had to sort of drag it up, like move it up manually.
In classwork.
Yeah, in classwork. So to do that chronologically, like you said, week 1, am I going to have to move it up manually within topics?
So when you create a topic, I thought mine tended to go. Topics tend to go to the bottom.
Right.
Assignments tend to go to the top.
Okay.
So
then,
if I create an assignment, and let's do this, and then select the topic that I want it to go with and assign, then it'll automatically go within that topic, and then I could just take and drag.
And drag it up. Okay. Yeah, because I noticed I had to drag it up for each class, and that was
actually
consuming.
If anybody was around long enough to remember, or used Google Classroom long enough to remember, the drag and drop feature was not always there. It was always, you had to click the 3 dots, and then there was option to move up or move down.
That's the one I've been using.
You had to click and then move down, and then click it again and move it down and move it down and move it down until you got it where you wanted it. The click and drag feature was one that people begged for, and Google finally put it.
So this is new then. That part's new.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
within probably the last maybe 6 months or so.
Good to know.
Okay. Anybody else? Other questions or anything like that? Okay. All right. Well, that's all I had for today. So I guess with that, we'll end it so you can enjoy this nice rainy day. And I don't know if anybody's joining us Thursday. We're going to do kind of an overview with Sapphire and what that'll look like. Same kind of idea, but just kind of review in Sapphire instead. So, maybe if you're still undecided, we can if you have time to stop by for that one, and then we can kind of compare the two. All right.
Well, you'll see me there Thursday, barring any complications with the
weather,
with the internet here. Yeah, because it's going on off. I keep getting this symbol that says your internet connection's unstable. It's unstable. I don't know if I'm sure it's pouring down there, but it's pouring buckets up here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, if you think of any questions, just you can always send me an email.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Brian.
Take care, everybody. Have a
Take
good
All right.
day.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.